using tech is good, but there needs to be a strategy behind it. So if somebody wants to use chat gpt to write their resume, go ahead, but then you need to be open to the idea that what chat gpt is giving you as an agile project manager, it's probably giving to 50 other agile project managers who are using the same software.
Hey, Yuvika, welcome to the show.
Hi Max, how are you?
Good. How are you today?
I am doing very well.
And
Great to have the call on a Monday.
yeah,
Just
call them
fucks
on
everything
exactly.
up. Yeah.
And as of this quarter, we're recording in the fall. And fall, it tends to be a prime hiring season, as you are aware in
Yes.
the resume writing job search space. So I thought it'd be good to have you on at this time to give professionals some resume writing strategies, how to navigate this tough job market to help them get their next job. Before we dive into you sharing your expertise, why don't you let my listeners or watchers know more about your background in regards to your experience as a resume writer?
Sure. So I've been in the resume writing business for like almost 6 years. I have my own company. It's careerlinko.com. And I also do a lot of work with a lot of B2B and B2C clients. So, for example, I've done a lot of human resource consulting work in the space of employer hiring and recruitment with ATS companies like Trackstar Hire, Indeed, the global job board Indeed.com, and Reich, a lot of different firms like that. So, and prior to doing, starting my own business, I was an ex recruiter, and that too across continents. So I worked in, I've hired people in US, Canada, and India. So it's been more like a global recruitment experience that I have. So I think I bring that perspective, the recruitment background, and along with that, I think, like you said, Max, fall is, just gets everything up and running for the recruitment season for the companies as well, right? Because the year is going to end. Everybody is looking at their hiring targets, getting more people on board. So I think this is a good time to spruce up your resume and LinkedIn profile, even if you're not actively looking for a role. I think it's a good time to do that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a great time to revise your resume and LinkedIn
Yeah.
profile. Uh, for me, when I talk to professionals, I always recommend that they update their resume, at least the resume, once a quarter or once every couple
Yeah.
quarters. And the reason
Yeah.
why I say that is if you are in a company for a few years and then you say you're looking for another job, you're not going to remember some of those accomplishments you achieved a few years ago, uh,
That's
because
so true. That's
yeah,
so true.
because you don't remember the full details,
Yeah.
and you might not remember the metrics from those few years ago. So I always recommend people update their resume once a quarter or once every couple quarters because it's so fresh in your mind of what you actually did in those projects. So you can be more
True.
detailed with your bullet points, and you can also add in those metrics so it's going to be still fresh in your mind compared to if you wanted to write about those accomplishments a few years from now
Yeah.
when you are looking for your next job.
I think that's so true. I think that you've said it really well because most of the work, clients I work with, they tend to see that they're applying actively for roles, and they are actually contacted by recruiters when they are not actively looking for a role. They're just passive. They have their LinkedIn profile years old, and nobody's even touched their resumes for like years, months probably, and suddenly they get a call from a recruiter. There's this position open, and would they be interested in that? So I think what you said is absolutely right. Just to have the resume in shape for any future opportunity that may arise, number one. And the other thing that I can certainly attest to is, you'll be amazed, 99% of my clients don't have any metrics when I ask them, if you did achieve a result or a business impact for the company that you're working for, can you tell me what was the time period? Can you tell me, the team size you had at that time, or the budgets that you were handling at that time? And they have no clue. And they tell me that, I have to go back and check my email, or probably if they've left the company, that there's no way to get that information back up, right? So I think having those metrics on the resume is so important, irrespective of the country and the industry that you're working for. and you're looking to target. So I think whether you're applying for a role in US or you're applying for a role in Canada, it's the same, right? The employers are looking for the same thing. They're looking for actionable metrics. They're looking for, those car stories that we tell, right? Car challenge, action, results. So you need to show the entire, the 360-degree approach there. So I think just so good to have everything updated.
Yeah, and the one thing you brought up is yeah, you might have documents in terms of like your achievements and stuff. What if you get laid off? Because layoffs are not planned.
True.
They're going to shut off your laptop and you can't access those metrics, those files again, right? So that's why I always recommend
Exactly.
like try to update it at least once a quarter or once every 2 quarters, because worst case scenario, you get laid off, you've already written down those stuffs in a master file, so to speak, before you write on your resume. And even if
Yeah.
you didn't, it'd be so fresh in your mind at that point that you could still implement it. So that's why I always recommend try to update your resume as frequent as regular as possible. So then uh, you'll know what are some of the top accomplishments you want to showcase when you're starting your job
Yeah.
search.
Definitely. So true.
And you are specifically an IT resume writer. So what is your what roles do you write for people in the IT space?
Yeah. So when I started off, I was more of a generalist. So I was actually doing resumes, across the board, across industries, across levels as well. But I think from the last 2 to 3 years, I've started specializing in IT, digital transformation, project management, program management, those kind of roles. So if we think about the levels here, it's more middle and senior level roles, senior executives, board of director positions, and middle management roles as well. So I think that's one space I've somehow sort of specialized in, and serving me well. And if I look at the specific roles like you mentioned, so chief information officer, then there are those C-suite positions for digital transformation, senior director for engagement delivery, project management, leading the PMO director. So it's been across the board. Yeah.
So I'm speaking to a lot of professionals. When they reach out to me, they say that it's a bad job market right now. What are you hearing on your side? Are professionals reaching out to you saying that it's a bad job market, or do you think it's more so that the resume is not up to date in a way that makes sense? That's why I'm not getting the results. So is it more of like, is it really external factors such as a bad job market, or they're not articulating their experience well enough in a competitive job market?
Okay, so I'll start off by saying something that I really believe in. Somehow connected, but somehow not connected as well. So whenever you look at a new graduate, you look at anybody who's just starting off their journey in the career field, or even somebody in who's an early career professional, less than 5 years of work experience. I've tend to notice they spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on their college degrees, on their education, on their just paying off all those student loans, and nobody thinks about those 2 pages that any employer is going to see when you're applying for a job. So I think resume is first of all extremely important. So if you look at the steps, I think it's extremely important to have the resume in shape and also the LinkedIn profile, because 99% of companies are hiring through LinkedIn today. So if somebody is not really looking at the resume, it's good to have at least the LinkedIn profile in shape.
For sure. And what are some hot roles right now for the rest of this quarter and next year?
I think the market is good in terms of recruitment. It's always been good because, of course, some industries are in a downturn and they are seeing lack of demand, and there's all sorts of firing happening. But then there are another set of industries and companies that are still hiring across the board, specifically for niche roles. So it's not really a bad market, I would say. Job seekers need to be a bit more targeted in the way that they're applying. So, for example, they can't just end up mass applying for a role. So, let's say, for example, if somebody is a project manager, they can't just apply. They can't just filter on LinkedIn or on Indeed or any job board like project manager in, let's say, uh, Ohio. You can't just filter. If you see 100 jobs, you can't apply to those 100. You need to do a short listing at your end, probably pick and choose 10 to 12 of the ones that are actually matching your role, or are one step up. I think most of the clients that I worked with, they fail to understand that they need to look at aspirational roles as well, not just the roles that they've been doing. So if 90% of the job description of a particular role is matching what you're doing today, that's not really an aspirational role. You need to be looking at a position that has a 60 to 70% match with what you're doing, and 30 to 40% a one step up. So I think you get what I'm saying. They need to apply, first of all, selectively, and second of all, they need to apply for aspirational roles, not just the same level that they're working at.
To go back to the aspirational role part, um, the rule of thumb is like you don't want to have like 90 to 100% of what they're looking for, because then it just
Exactly.
yeah, because it shows
then
like
what's the negotiation power, right? Nobody can actually negotiate for a higher salary. You can't negotiate for better benefits. You can't really do anything. The employer will come back and say, oh, this is, you're already doing this, so let's work with a 8% hike or a 10% hike, right? So there's no room for negotiation there, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
that makes sense. And the thing is, like a lot of people, they don't want to apply to jobs they don't think they're as qualified. So let's say it's 50 to 60% that they match. They don't sometimes they don't want to feel like applying to it because oh, someone that's 70 to 80% will probably get it before me because I'm not as qualified based off the job ad. So my question to you is, what's the proper percentage between your skill set and matching the job ad that is not like it's still aspirational as you'll learn, but it's not
Yeah.
going to put you to the point where they perceive you as being overqualified.
Yeah, I think one point you rightly highlighted, that the job seeker should not be really doing the shortlisting on their own, right? That's the job of a recruiter. So if somebody's, if a job seeker is reading a particular job description, you shouldn't be ruling yourself out even before you've applied for the role. So that's one thing. And I think having a 60 to 70 or a maximum 75% ratio with respect to what you've already done in the job description, for the role that you're applying for, is a good number, because even employers understand that they can't get a ready-made talent, right? If they have 10 things that they need done for a particular role, they can't have a person who's fully trained, fully 100% experienced for that particular role, right? So they will also need to do some X% of training or mentorship to get that person up to the expectations that are required of that role. So I think 60 to 75% is a fair number. If you see that, if a job seeker sees that this is what something that I've done, I feel comfortable doing it, and then there are that 25% is extra, that is an opportunity for me to learn, and an opportunity for the employer also to mold the job seeker as per their internal culture fit, making sure that the person fits into that role, into the department and the organization. I think that's a fair number to go with.
Okay, good. So we established a good percentage in terms of like how you should apply, or when you should apply. From a resume strategy perspective, when professionals reach out to you and they need some resume help, obviously, I'm assuming that you would take their existing resume as a foundation before you start rewriting it for them. From your experience, what are some of the common mistakes that you've seen on these resumes that they've done themselves?
I think the first thing that I noticed is a lot of typos, which is very obvious. I think you'd attest to that. And the second thing that I have noticed, in currently as a resume writer as well, and previously as an ex recruiter as well, that nobody writes numbers in their resumes. They're just stuffing it with all theoretical terms related to their industry, not even caring to elaborate upon the acronyms, because you'll be amazed to find out so many ATS softwares actually reject a profile just because you don't have those specific keywords related to that industry or the specific role that you've done. So for example, let's say uh, I had a client who wanted to specifically apply for a Google position, right? And Google automatically rejects your profile if you don't have a GitHub link for specifically for the technical roles in the resume. And he didn't have that, and he didn't know about that as well. So the moment we included that, the ATS scanning went off well. So he got the interview calls and successive interviews as well, and eventually was hired. So I think it's those little things, with regarding to the industry that people are not aware of, and they just completely miss the numbers. I think that's the biggest thing that I've noticed, because otherwise how do you say, how is Max Chan's resume different from Yuvika Iyer's? If you're not able to show actionable metrics, you're not able to show business impact achieved, and the value add that you've had, just by being there in the company.
Exactly. And going back to the GitHub portion, uh, if someone's in a is very technical role, I always recommend having a portfolio. What do you
Yeah.
recommend in terms of like formatting a GitHub or another type of website that can give you an opportunity to showcase your work via portfolio? Like, what do you recommend a professional formats it in a way that makes sense for the recruiter if they decide to click on it?
Yeah, so I think even if you look at the specifically the technical roles, like you said, having a separate portfolio is amazing. It's a must-have actually for early career professionals to mid-level career professionals. But then after that, uh, nobody's really seeing the technical aspect of it. It's more technical plus the business side of it, even as you're rising the ranks in the organization, right? So if you look at senior roles and executive roles like, VP, and you go above that, no company is actually looking for a GitHub link or anything like that. It's more the business impact that you've had, with the technical leadership skills that you bring to the role. Yeah, so I think the having a portfolio is good, specifically recommended for early to mid career professionals. And but then I would say definitely have one instead of not having one. It's always good to have one.
Yeah, I work with a lot of technical professionals. For example, like data science or UX UI design, and I'm shocked
Yeah,
that some of them don't have a portfolio on their resume that they can link up to, right? Because these are very technical roles, and they
exactly.
do want to see your work, right?
Exactly. And if you have something live, 365, 24/7, it's amazing, right? Because you're that's doing the talking for you. You don't really need that two-page resume. Then you can actually refer a recruiter directly to the portfolio first, and then probably follow it up with ATS compatible resume or something. Yeah.
Exactly. And in terms of skill sets, a lot of resumes they have a skill section or a core competency section where you highlight keywords.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, in your opinion, what are some of the skills or tech stack for IT professionals that they should incorporate now, or at least build up their skills they don't have it? Ensure that it's on the resume so they're in high demand. So the question again is, what are some of the high demand IT skills right now that you should include on your resume?
Yeah. So I think first of all, I've also seen a lot of professionals not having a key skill section. So I think that's a total no no. There should be a key skills section specifically, right? And it should be ideally divided into two. So one should be the soft skills that you want to showcase that you have. Could be anything from interpersonal communication, analytical decision making, that kind of soft skills. And the other section should be specifically about the technical proficiency that is there, and that can be, the languages, Java, Python, C++, and again then moving on to the software that you've used. A lot of companies also see the softwares that you worked with, so having Jira there, GitHub there is essential. So I think just having that section first of all is extremely important, and then as based on the different roles. So for example, if you're looking at an agile project manager, this, the tech skills, the tech stack that he would be having would be very different from, let's say, a UI UX designer. So I think, but having that is extremely important, while the skills themselves could be different based on the roles and the industries that they're working in.
You mentioned earlier that when it comes to like having a GitHub, it's more for early to mid professionals, mid level professionals. When you get to the more senior level positions, GitHub
Yeah.
isn't really as necessary, or if necessary at all. So, what's the difference between an early to mid level IT resume compared to an IT resume for gears more towards the senior level position?
So ideally, in terms of the resume writing best practices, it's, the professionals are divided into three different, groups. So the early career professionals would be somebody who's just graduated, going up to 5 years of work experience. That should be in this in any industry, but shouldn't ideally be something like, their the experiences that they've had when they were, doing school or something like that, probably more white collar roles. And then the second one would be a professional, ideally a mid career, who would be between having 6 to let's say 12 to 14 years of work experience. Anything above that ideally qualifies as senior level, and then executive levels then start from 18 plus, 20 plus.
Got it.
But
And
then that also depends on the roles as well, because a lot of times you'll notice that, somebody's reached a director level position with, let's say 12 years of work experience. In those cases, you ideally need to look at the role and the responsibility that they're handling, instead of the number of experiences they have had.
you mentioned earlier about tailoring your resume, right? How you can't just like mass apply, expect results.
Yeah.
Uh, Again, a lot of professionals don't want to mass apply, don't want to like tailor their resume because it's very tedious. Like, how do you recommend people tailor the resume in a way that makes sense, but not spend, like, for example, an hour customizing a resume for an application? Because again, online applying is still a volume game. Uh, you still have to tailor to a certain extent, but you don't
Yeah.
want to spend so much time that you're not actually getting the right amount of applications out.
Okay, so I'm amazed by the fact that, so many people find it so difficult, but actually is it isn't really so difficult. So let's say, okay, let's say there's a UI UX designer, right? And he's applying for a role. uh, he has 20 positions that he could apply to for the particular city that he is in. And if you look at the if he looks at the 20 roles and opens the job description, there's only two places that the resume actually needs to be modified for. One is the summary, second is the key skill section. That's all. So if you're able to get the keywords that are there in the job description in the key skills section and the summary, that's more than enough, because ATS will be easily able to scan the summary and the key skill section, and will be able to understand that, Max has done this, that particular skill is available. So, let's go ahead. For example, let's say it says, user interface design. Let's say that's a keyword, right? So, if user interface design is found in the summary and it is found in the key skill section, the ATS software will say that it's available in two places. So it's an automatic match. So that's just one example of a keyword that I'm sharing with you. And if you find 10 or 12 such keywords and you make sure that that's included in the summary and the key skill section, that's more than enough.
Yeah, which goes to my next point about keyword stuffing, right? There's a lot of professionals that use tools such as JobScan, where they, I think,
Yeah,
I haven't used this in a while, but you would post the job ad into this the platform, and then you put your resume in, and then they would see how much your resume matches the job ad. What's your thoughts on these like keyword optimizer tools? I always tell professionals to use it with a grain of salt. Like, don't try to get an extremely high score, because then it doesn't read well, because you're just stuffing the keywords in places that don't
exactly.
make sense. So, what's your thoughts on uh, professionals using these keyword optimizers tools to get ahead in their job search?
I think using any kind of tech is good, it's not bad. But then the extent to which you're using, there needs to be a strategy behind it. It can't be just mindless usage of tech, right, to get ahead. So I think, let's say, like, the previous example that I mentioned, so if you find 12 keywords which are there in the top job description, it's enough to include them once. You don't need to stuff the same keyword 20 times inside the resume. So I think just having them there is enough, but that needs to be in an organic sort of manner. It can't be just stuffing it anywhere and everywhere. And the most important thing is the job seeker should have actually done it. You can't just stuff keywords for the sake of stuffing those keywords in. You need to actually do that work. So if you know user interface design, you add that. Otherwise, you don't.
Yeah, I've seen resumes where someone adds in Python by going through their bullet points, and there's nothing about them using Python, even if it's not
Yeah,
explicitly stated that they use Python. The way that they wrote the bullet point, it doesn't show anything that they would have used Python in that type of role.
that's just silly, because ultimately, even if the resume gets shortlisted, what do you do in the interview? How can you
Yeah,
explain
yeah,
that? If you get a question, how will you explain that? So it's both ways. So it needs to help you. You can't do anything that goes against you. Then
yeah,
what's the point
exactly.
of doing it?
Yeah, like if again, if you get shortlisted for a Python job and they ask you to do a
Yeah,
Python test, you can't do it. So it just doesn't make any sense to like add it in just to get into an interview that you know you're not really qualified for.
exactly.
And in terms of the cover letter component, there's always an argument about whether a cover letter is necessary in this day and age. What's your thoughts on incorporating a cover letter into your application?
Yeah, so I think most of the organizations that people will apply to, they either ask for a separate cover letter document to be uploaded. If you're applying through Talio, Workable, any kind of software, and otherwise, if the company doesn't really specifically mention a document to be uploaded, you are probably emailing your resume, right, to somebody, to a recruiter or to a ex-colleague or a mentor, asking for an informational interview or asking for a position, right, or a referral for that matter. Still you're emailing them, right? So you need a write up, you need some sort of a note to tell them that, FYI, this is my resume and this is, just a highlight of what I've done. What is that? That's the cover letter. You still need, 4 5 lines of an explanation, something that highlights your profile, and in a summarized manner you tell them what you do and what you're looking for. So that's basically a cover letter, right? So even if you don't have it written like a separate document, you would still need an email cover letter whenever you are, sending out your resume for an informational interview, for a referral, or to, just to an ex peer, colleague, mentor, asking for, any positions that they may know of. So I think it's essential. It's absolutely essential.
Speaking of emailing your resume, what's your opinion about like reaching out to like the recruiter position? For example, when someone applies to a job on LinkedIn, they always,
Yeah,
not always, but sometimes there's a, this is the person that posted the job, and they try to DM them or email them, but they don't get a response. What's your thoughts on like reaching out to the recruiter directly of that position to see if there's a way to at least get a conversation with them?
I think first of all it's a very good way of uh, getting your foot in the door. Okay, you've applied, you have applied to the role, and I think people shouldn't get disheartened because if a recruiter doesn't reply to them, because like they say, the real result is in the follow up. Most of the people will send a DM once and then stop, get disheartened. Oh, the recruiter is not replying to me. But then why don't you try following it up with, let's say 4 days down the line or 7 days down the line. The person may just be busy, be, you know buried under tons of work, could be anything, right? But most of the people that I've seen, most of the recruiters that I've seen, they tend to reply. It's more about for and follow up is not bad. Who said follow up is bad? So I think 90% of people, what they tend to do is just send one message and they don't get a reply and they'll stop. So I think they should be following up, and that's actually a very good way of getting a foot in the door and getting a way across, a bond built with the recruiter. Because what if this position closes and you're not shortlisted or something, but then they may have future positions coming up and you may be a good fit. So, and if you've had that conversation, you've built the bridge, you've said hi, they'll probably get in touch with you for the next role that they have open. So it's definitely a great idea.
Another avenue that professionals are interested in seeking out is reaching out to a recruitment firm. I know there's probably a fair amount of recruitment firms in Toronto that focuses on IT roles. What's
Yeah,
your thoughts of like reaching out to like a third party recruitment firm to help you in the with your job search compared to applying to the roles that are posted by talent acquisition professionals that are actually hired directly in the company?
I think it's all about the speed, right? Because if you actually go in and send your application, your resume to, these agencies, they may not really have open positions at that time. So I think it's a long game. You need to be there in for the long haul. They may just contact you 6 months down the line, or even after 1 year or something like that. Versus somebody who's posted an open role that's live and open at this. They're hiring at this time. So I think it's more about the speed, because this would be shorter, this would be fast. You'll get results, you'll get feedback, you'll get a yes or an auto generated email saying no, you've not been shortlisted. You'll get results. You'll see what's happening. But if you go in and apply for bigger firms, they may end up, because there the resume is actually going into a database, right? Your resume is also going into a database, and there are hundreds of other resumes also going into a database, and they may not even have an open position at that time. So I think that's more of a longer game. You can just try doing that, but then can't really hope for results in the shorter time frame. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of the job search, right? A lot of people want jobs within like a month or 2 months.
Yeah.
If someone's starting their job search, what do you recommend in terms of the timeline? I always say 3 to 6 months if you are diligent in your job search process. Obviously, some people could be faster, some could be a bit longer. What is your experience in terms of a proper job search timeline from starting your job search to a job offer?
So I think first thing is, this would vary for different people, right? It depends on the level of effort you are putting in, the timelines you're applying for, the number of roles you're applying for, and the kind of roles that you're applying for. So first of all, this would be different for every professional. And second, I think typically I tend to tell my clients that this would be 4 to 8 weeks, and most of them tend to get a role within that time, because then I actually coach them that you need to selectively apply for roles. You can't just go mass applying to hundreds of roles, right? So, and so when you are doing the pre-qualification at your own step, I think the hit rate just increases. And I've had clients taking the revamped resume, going out applying, and they've gotten 4 offers, 8 interviews, and they're actually picking and choosing which one to go to. So I think that's a happy problem to have. But for that to happen, I think there's a lot of effort that goes behind it, and there needs to be a solid strategy. You can't just go randomly applying to everything that you see.
Okay, so speaking of that, about applying to everything that you see, let's say a client works with you, program manager in IT as an example, you have their resume done. How do you like recommend that they strategically apply instead of just mass applying for every program manager role out there?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that I tell them is to ideally use LinkedIn for sending in applications, and because LinkedIn works both ways. So one part is where you are actively applying to those roles, right? You're going into LinkedIn jobs, you're filtering program manager, okay, Toronto, and then you're going and seeing the roles that are open, actively hiring. And there's the other part to LinkedIn is where you are passively being contacted by a recruiter that's who's looking for a program manager in IT. So I think for that, the profile needs to be optimized, and the skills need to be there on the profile. The core skills that the program manager should have. So I think the number one thing that I tell them first is to use LinkedIn. Most of them tend not to, but then for IT, LinkedIn is where the action is. You need to be there. And the second thing is also the point that you already mentioned, contacting recruiters in the space, and this has actually reaped results for a lot of them. If you're actually contacting the job poster, it has actually led to a lot of conversations, and then going up to informational interviews, and then ultimately generating offers as well. So I think that is also a great thing to do. And the entire thing is basically having a strategy in place with respect to the roles that you're applying for, and then following up wherever uh, they are able to see the name of the person, the name of the poster, or probably if they just go and search, if they have a second level connection or a third level connection with anybody who's working in the organization that they've applied for, and they have a common connection, to see if they are able to introduce, if the common connection is able to introduce them with the recruiter or with the hiring manager over there. That works in some cases, doesn't work in some cases, because a lot of people are not really willing to do that introduction in the first place. But then it's definitely a good thing to try, right? Like I said,
Oh,
the treasure lies in the follow up.
yes, the fortunes in the follow up. That's the phrase.
Yeah, exactly.
To touch
Yeah,
upon LinkedIn for a little bit, two questions. The first is when you're applying to LinkedIn, when you're applying to jobs on LinkedIn, there's the easy apply button. Do you recommend that, or do you recommend like going
never.
through the proper process?
Never the easy apply. I always tell my clients never to use the easy apply option. It sounds easy, it's the instant age, right? We want everything instantly, instant gratification. But then is what easy apply basically does is it just sends your profile right as it is through LinkedIn's ATS, the which is inbuilt inside. LinkedIn has an ATS inside, right? So it just automatically sends your profile through that, and I think that's not such a great thing. You should be going through the longer route. May take you 10 more minutes extra, but then you are actually able to customize each and every question that there may be there, and just try and include more of the keywords that are there in the job description rather than just sending, just bulk sending whatever there is there on your profile, for especially for somebody whose LinkedIn has not been updated, because that would be years old, right? So no chance of keywords being there.
And speaking of keywords, that's my next question. How do you incorporate keywords on LinkedIn that make sense, and where do you incorporate them? Do you incorporate them in your headline, your about section, your work experience, and LinkedIn's dedicated skill section? How how do you incorporate keywords into your LinkedIn profile? And the other question uh, that I want to add to that in regards to keywords is for the resume is a bit targeted. You can always switch out keywords based on what role you're applying to, but for LinkedIn, uh, you do have recruiters reaching out to you, so you do have to make it a bit more general. So how do you incorporate the right keywords for a general perspective?
Yeah, so I think looking at the first part of the question, I think LinkedIn's inbuilt ATS basically scans for keywords in four places. One is the headline. Second is the about section or the summary section, as some like to call it. Third is the skills section, which is quite below in the profile, and nobody even looks at it. And the fourth one is the work experience section. So let's say there's an agile project manager, and he's planning to apply for agile project manager roles, scrum master roles, of the jobs of basically a similar profile, right? So if you see, so agile project manager or agile project management, if you don't want it to be in the active term, needs to be present across those four places. So I think that's the four places that LinkedIn has. It basically scans for keywords there.
Got it. Okay. And the last question I wanted to ask you in regards to like the job search is obviously with the evolving of AI, right? A lot of I'm
Yeah,
sure you've seen a lot of social media posts out there on how to use AI to write your resume, cover letter, all that
yeah.
stuff. What's your
Yeah.
thoughts on using AI in your job search?
So like I said, using tech is good, but there needs to be a strategy behind it, right? So if somebody wants to use chat gpt to write their resume, by all means go ahead, it's free. And even if you're looking at the paid version, it's great, right? Use it. But then you need to be open to the idea that what chat gpt is giving you as an agile project manager, it's probably giving to 50 other agile project managers who are using the same software. I saw a big smile on your face. So I think that's come to your mind as well, right? So it's going to be generic. It's just going to give you a bunch of keywords stuffed for the industry, for the role, with no regard to what you have actually done in the role. So I think perfect. If somebody wants to do DIY, do their own resume, go ahead and use it. But you need to be open to the risk that four other people or 50 other people or 100 other people will probably have those exact same bullets written in the same manner, same action verbs in their resume as well. So I think using that as a base is good, but then you need to add that bit of personal touch. Nothing can go without a human touch there. You need to refine that. You need to actually add the numbers. You need to write what you've done in the role, right? So for example, a company who has an agile project manager in uh, let's say the healthcare space would be different from an agile project manager who's working in the IT or the tech space, right? Or information services for that matter, or cybersecurity for that matter. Their roles would be different. ChatGPT doesn't know that. It's just going to give you the same bullets over and over again. So then there needs that, it's okay as a first draft or something like that. You need some sentences written, bullets written, perfect, go ahead. But then you need to actually sit down, analyze that, add in what you've done, add in that personal touch, get those metrics in there what employers would be looking for. Because nobody really wants a cookie cutter resume, right? You don't want your resume to be the same as 50 other people who may be applying for the same role. It's too much of an embarrassment, plus your resume will not get shortlisted. I don't really think somebody would want that to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So to just talk about that in terms of like if you're using ChatGPT to write bullet points, someone else might be doing the same, and it's going to be generic. Yeah, you can change it up, maybe add your own percentages, but if the sentence pattern is the same, the recruiter's going to know. And the reason why I was like smiling earlier is I saw a LinkedIn post a few months ago, and basically this recruiter was talking about how she looked through four resumes back to back, and she knew it was ChatGPT because they all said the same type of responsibilities,
Yeah.
right? So recruiters are smarter. They know that your keyword stuffing. They know you're using ChatGPT to write your resume.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's no. I'm assuming there's no ChatGPT like detector right now, but again, ChatGPT can only write so many variations of a specific like responsibility, and if you don't
Exactly.
um, customize it in a way that makes sense, a recruiter's going to know that you just plugged in like your work experience with ChatGPT and just turned it into a resume to submit. I always say, like you said, using technology in your job search is good, but it should be a guide, not the main source of your strategy.
That's a great perspective, I think. Yeah.
And for someone who's struggling in their job search right now, what is your advice in terms of like mindset or um, should they look to build up their skills, or is it just that their way they're formatting their resume is not reflective of what's employers are looking for in this current market?
I think the first thing that I would recommend is having a positive mindset. It needs to be about being in for the long haul, right? If some, if a peer or a friend is getting a role in 2 weeks, doesn't mean you will get a role in 2 weeks, right? So I think uh, any professional needs to be open to the fact that they need to be in for the long haul for as long as it takes. Once you have that mindset, I think you're ready to put in the work, you're ready to put in the time that it will take, for it to happen. And the second thing is, I think every professional should be open to feedback. And by open to feedback, I mean, they should be actually taking advice from people who are experts in their field, right? So you can't really be asking for advice from an entrepreneur who's never had a resume in his life, right? Or a family member who doesn't really work, or isn't, has their own business or something like that. So you need to get advice from experts and should be open to feedback. You shouldn't be really thinking that what I'm doing is right, because it could be X reasons, not right in their profile or in their resume, that, could be hindering their, search, or, it could be hindering their entire career. So I think having a positive mindset and being open to feedback from from the experts, I think that will really help in opening up their minds to possibilities. And you never know, I think I like I tell my clients, everybody should be open for having informational interviews, because you never know where the next role may come in from. So, just getting those referrals in, connecting with your network to see if there are any informational interviews, getting feedback. I think that's a great way of, being in the game and making sure that you're still walking. It's not like you're sitting down and just sad, why aren't things working out for me, just being in the game, being active, and because you need to be open for the world to throw you opportunities, right? And your eyes need to be open to catch it. So I think that is really, really important.
Absolutely. And the other thing that professionals are concerned about is resume gaps, right? So if someone's been in
Yeah.
that job search for a few months or even longer, that gap's going to get larger and larger. So as you know, statistics say that recruiters tend to prefer people who are already employed compared to people who are not. That's all over the internet in terms of that statistic. So, is there any way to minimize that resume gap, or should you not really worry about it? It's more about if you think the resume gap's a hindrance, maybe uh, try to network and reach out to people because then you're talking to them first before they know about your experience. So, what's your thoughts on overcoming that resume gap?
So I think, first of all, I think a resume gap is just overblown out of proportion. If you have the education, if you've had any kind of similar experience that you've done previously, and let's say you have a 3 year or a 4 year gap, due to, could be due to a sabbatical, due to caregiving reasons, having a baby, could be x number of reasons, right? So I think career gap is just blown out of proportion. So if, like, let's take the agile project manager example, right? If somebody's has that, scrum background, agile project management certifications, you've done that role for, let's say, 5 years, 6 years, and then you have a gap of 2 years or 3 years, just write about what you've done, and I am guaranteeing the CV will get shortlisted. I myself have hired people, with gaps. So it's all about showcasing what you know, what you've done, and being open to learning. So that professional should be able to say, okay, I knew the trends and the emerging technologies 3 years back, but I am open and willing to learn, for the time that I've missed, and I'm ready to get started. I think, that just being open to learning or being open to feedback can go a long way, and they should be definitely showcasing what they've done, because just because the experience is old doesn't mean that it's not valuable, right? They've done the work, they have those certifications. So I think getting a recent certification, getting some sort of a online course, certification, training, webinar, anything, that gets them, more in tune with what's going on in the job market or the industry right now, will certainly help, because they will be able to showcase the recent certification right on top in their summary, in their headline. That will really help. Plus, whatever experience they've had, they should be showcasing that very nicely in a nice, you know metric driven manner. I think that will definitely open the doors for them. Nobody really looks at resume gaps today. If you've done the work and you're willing to learn, I think definitely every professional will get hired.
And that's a great point. And what amazing advice that you provided today, Yuvika, in regards to like resume strategy, job search strategy, all that all that information to help professionals who are listening who are frustrated have some direction in their job search and hopefully get their next job by the end of the year. So, if someone was interested to learn more about what you do and how you can help them, how can they reach out?
Sure, I think LinkedIn is the easiest way, right? So just by sending a DM on LinkedIn, or going to my website, I think both are easy enough.
Oh, sounds good. Again, appreciate the time, Yuvika, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you so much for having me, Max. This has been a wonderful and eye-opening conversation. Lovely speaking with you.
Thank you so much for watching. For more content on careers, job search, and self improvement, make sure to hit that subscribe button.